Filed earlier this week in Texas. The NFL Tuesday said that it's reviewing the complaint under the personal conduct policy. Watson said,
focusing on being the best quarterback I can be on the game plan and trying to be better than we were last week so we can get a W.
Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said Watson will still start Sunday against the Jaguars.
We'll let due process play out and follow the NFL's guidelines.
Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow said a viral video of him shaking his wrist out in discomfort wasn't actually an injury, but a way to keep himself loose.
When you come back from injury, you're always trying to keep the joint loose. That's part of ligament injuries. If you don't move it, you're going to lose it. So moving around, keeping it loose.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Timmy, everybody. Great job. Next up for our 5th grade class recital, we have Samantha.
10 times better performance can make a big difference. Castrol Edge Motor Oil gives your engine 10 times better high-stress performance. Castrol Edge, better oil for maximum performance. Now through December 28th, Castrol Edge and Edge High Mileage Motor Oil are on rollback at Walmart.
Claim based on sequence 9 test under high-load conditions versus API SP test limits.
Progressive presents Renter's MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Joe Fallon's bedroom mini fridge. Sure, this pint-sized chiller's max capacity is 3 soda cans, but what it lacks in stature, it makes up in cooling strength. Each beverage a perfect 37 degrees every time. And the 2 feet Joe walks to get a drink, priceless. That's why his mini fridge is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
No way football is played in the fall and winter
because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
And what a football full circle we have in store on this Thursday, live right here on the SportsGrid Radio Network. A Thursday that kicks off our second week of the 2024 NFL regular season with a divisional duel in Miami with Joe Lisi's Miami Dolphins hosting the Buffalo Bills. But a ton of college football news and conversations to have on this Thursday as well, with a great game in San Marcos, Texas tonight between Texas State, and Arizona State, not Texas Tech. That team, sham of a program in Lubbock. He is the mastermind of the pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. The vibes are high. We are live here on Football Full Circle.
Oh, I have to admit, Ben, it's a great NFL game between Josh Allen and Tua, right? High-powered Miami offense and Buffalo. These teams squared off at the end of the regular season with the division title on the line. And it's a pretty good college game tonight. I don't know how I'm going to squeeze this in with the in-game live. I'm going to have it on my phone. But Kenny Dillingham and Sam Levin are rolling sevens out there in Tempe. They go on the road, and they're dogs. Is it a trap game against Texas State? I'm actually looking forward to that. So we'll see how this plays out a little bit later. And Texas Tech is dead to me after that pathetic performance in Pullman last Saturday night.
Got absolutely routed in Pullman as a road favorite on the Palouse. They still see John Mateer running down the sidelines against the Red Raiders last Saturday night. Who does Lisi have to talk to get a second screen in the SportsGrid studio so he can watch a little Sun Devil and Bobcat football action on this Thursday, with, of course, a lot of focus on NFL football in-game live game day on the start of week number 2. So let me just say, we're going to send you into your Thursday of football with a full breakdown, picks, best bets for Thursday night football between the Dolphins and the Bills in the final 35, 40 minutes of this show. But, Lisi, we start with college football, which is where we might have started already because of a really good game between two unbeaten teams in Arizona State and Texas State. But we got huge realignment news overnight. The Pac-12 back from the dead. Breaking news in the overnight hours that the Pac-12 was targeting and trying to add Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, with an announcement a little bit after 9 a.m. Eastern time on this Thursday morning from the Pac-12 as a conference in those 4 football programs and athletic departments as well. It is now confirmed. Starting in 2026, the Pac-2 is now the 6th Pac, using the Pac-12 branding and legacy to bring this conference back. 6 schools, Oregon State, Washington State, in the 4 new additions. Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State. Joe, once again, the Pac-12 has a little bit of life.
It does. And, when we talked about this all offseason in regards to what alignment, would the 2 teams, align themselves. We thought Mountain West immediately, right? Because it just makes sense. You have the ties to San Diego State and Fresno State, teams in California, synergistically with Colorado State as well. Again, they have a little bit of a life, right? That was the common move. Now, where do they go from here? I've heard they need 2 more teams to keep their FBS status within the next 2 years, right? So if you're asking me, Ben, I think it's easy. San Jose State and Air Force. Add both of those teams, and now you have the Pac-12, or you want to sprinkle in Hawaii just for the aesthetics, because, it would be great to see those teams obviously travel, to Hawaii. That would be the common denominator for me. It's good that at least Washington State and Oregon State can align themselves. But let's be honest, they're not going to get an automatic bid in 2 years unless you have the big boys there. They're still going to have to play their way in. They'll get the automatic bid maybe, if they're undefeated. But, it is what it is. That is the best of what they have to offer right here, right now.
Yeah, so many different components of this conversation. And this is the year in 2024 that realignment has taken hold. Of course, in the summers, in the off seasons, in the past 3 years, we have brought you all of the changes to the formation of college football. We did not really expect, Joe, this to happen entering week 3 of the regular season in CFB. Realignment rumors and reports are often reserved for what we see in May, in June, and July. So the Pac-12 making a statement with Mountain West teams entering a big week for the Forgotten Two, with rivalry games in the Civil War between Oregon and Oregon State, and the Apple Cup between Wazoo and Washington. Now for the actual logistics of how this will play out. Lisi is spot on and correct. To maintain FBS status as a true conference, you need at least 8 accredited member institutions. So the new Pac-12 is still 2 schools short as of this moment, but the moves will not happen until 2026 to even begin with. Who might those teams be? Lisi mentioned a few that play in the Mountain West. Joe, we know what the economic engine is, though, for realignment. It's not pedigree on the football field. It's not winning ways. It's not competition. It's TV revenue. It's TV market size. So I actually think a couple of schools to pay attention to, UNLV in Las Vegas, speaks for itself. I'm not exactly sure what other schools in the remaining Mountain West would really move the needle. San Jose State in Northern California, big television market with San Francisco in its boundary as well. I would think actually maybe some schools that aren't that geographically located to what would be the new Pac-12, but would make a little bit of sense. Maybe some schools from the American, like a UTSA or a Tulane, if they wanted to extend a little bit further east. When you're thinking of big TV markets, San Antonio and New Orleans are certainly that.
Yeah, absolutely. And competitive programs, right? UTSA with Jeff Traylor, a consistent bowl team. And prior, in regards to Tulane with Willie Fritz, when they were there, they were, playing with the big boys, and they did this past Saturday against Kansas State, assuming that they can maintain that momentum that the program has had over the past 5 or 6 seasons. Those are pretty good options. Again, it's like, it's the lesser of evils, right, in regards to where they are right now. You're not going to get that marquee brand. It's, can you keep that pulse going to where maybe you can maintain momentum? I've heard this, and I saw this, maybe if they had Cal and Stanford. I mean, come on. I mean, if they go back to that, though, I'm just saying, like, Cal and Stanford would, I mean, come on. Let's just stop. We can't. They're going to go from the ACC back to the Pac-12. I mean, Absolutely not. You cannot do that. If this is a rebranding, you have to make the best of what you have and move forward that way. And again, it's good for Oregon State and Washington State to at least bring some stability to these programs and their head coaches. I credit both of those guys, Bray and Dicker. They could have left. Those kids could have left. They maintained and stayed there, and they're playing out the season.
Snip, snap. Not going to be the case for the ACC teams, Cal and Stanford. They are part of the grant of rights that has been the issue for Florida State and Clemson through 2036 as of this time. Now, Joe mentioned it. The geographic and regional ties to the Mountain West always seem natural to add schools, to join leagues, and there was a scheduling alliance that happened this year. The fact that the Beavs of Oregon State and the Cougs of Wazoo play 6 Mountain West teams, it's a part of a scheduling alliance where the Mountain West now kind of gets raked over the coals a little bit, but the Mountain West kind of had the foresight of what seemed to be inevitable, that the Pac-12, with its branding and legacy, would try to poach from its schools. So the Mountain West teams that now depart for the Pac-12 in 2026, Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, and Fresno State, have to pay a $17 million exit fee, an additional $10 to $12 million for leaving for the Pac-12 based on the scheduling alliance and agreement. More around college football up next on FFC.
Fall is coming.
Don't look like an idiot at work.
Know your stuff.
Football and everything else.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
A recall on apple juice due to potentially harmful levels of arsenic has expanded to include products at several retailers nationwide. This update brought to you by Prevnar 20. On Monday, Refresco Beverages Incorporated issued a voluntary recall of 133,500 cases of apple juice after the products were found to contain inorganic arsenic slightly above FDA recommended levels. The expanded recall came just weeks after Walmart pulled more than 9,500 cases of apple juice from its shelves after it tested positive for elevated arsenic levels. A sequel to the classic adventure film The Goonies is reportedly in the works, with the original cast set to return. The film, released in 1985, follows a group of kids from Goondocks in Astoria, Oregon, who follow a treasure map to try and save their homes from foreclosure. The news was originally reported by The Sun, which reports the film could start production next summer, with it premiering in theaters by 2026 or 2027. I'm Trey Westerberg with the Sports Grid News Flash.
If I was to describe this sandwich in one word, I would say magical. Hi, this is Jamor, and the little thing that I love about the Chick-fil-A honey pepper pimento chicken sandwich is that extra oomph. I go back and forth from the spicy filet to the original filet. I get into the sweetness of the honey, then you have the extra kick from the spicy filet. The combination alone takes it over the top. It's award-winning.
The Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich is back with a bite. Try it with the original or spicy filet, now for a limited time. Real guests paid for their testimonial.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you're always looking for ways to position your operation to create opportunities and move on them faster. With Bank of America, you get access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
Fall is almost here.
It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Conference realignment news into the regular season for college football, confirmed from the reports of the overnight hours and officially announced. The Pac-12 is adding 4 schools from the Mountain West starting in 2026. Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, and San Diego State. As Lisi shared, still 2 schools shy of being considered a legitimate FBS conference. You need at least 8 member institutions to maintain that status. Joe, the Pac-12, we often forget, more than a decade ago, was actually the beacon in terms of where leagues were with TV deals based on money, revenue, and tradition. wasn't the Big Ten and the SEC at the forefront by themselves. The Pac-12 was right there, step for step. But some bad financial decisions made by former Commissioner Larry Scott and unable to be resolved by current Commissioner George Kliavkoff. That's the issue for the Pac-12. Now a new commissioner in the Pac-12 as well. So where things are, Lisi Guy, for this conference, they're on their way back up. They're still not a full FBS conference at this moment. And of course, these changes are about 2 years away, starting in 2026. But again, the Pac-12 has a little bit of life. Will it be a power conference? Will the Power 5 return like it was over the last 10 plus years? No, not necessarily. But we will have a Power 4 and maybe now 10 full leagues at the FBS level in a group of 6.
Yeah, and that's the hope, right? Is that, these teams can play in a competitive league and potentially make the college football playoff if they're undefeated or a conference champion. And that's what you want to see. Again, they were left for dead. And again, I still think that they have repercussions against the former Pac-12 for not having their best interest in mind from a legality standpoint. Yeah. Then, because, when all these other 10 teams decided to jump ship, nobody conferred with Washington State or Oregon State. When you think about the former commissioner, right, in regards to that situation, he is responsible and the commissioner is responsible for every institutional program under their watch for the most part. To say that you took care of 80% or 90% and left the 2 hanging, how is that possible? Yeah. So I'm happy that, they have an opportunity to keep this conference alive. But again, it's what's left of it. And they're the ones holding the bag, and they're the ones that have to elevate it.
Right. The program flag bearers of the Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12 are still not there. USC and UCLA in the Big Ten. Oregon and Washington from the Northwest in the Big Ten. Even the schools that rounded out the 4 corners of the Pac-12 conference are now in the Big 12, and Cal and Stanford, the academic elites, are out in the ACC. There was a reason, sadly enough, not because of pedigree or passion, but just because of TV numbers, that in Corvallis, Oregon State, and in Pullman, Washington State, were left behind. Again, not because of football talent or competition or wins and losses, just TV revenue. So in a big week for the Cougs and the Beavs, as they will get ready to take on their former conference foes in non-conference rivalry games, this is a significant change to the setting in college football, but still 2 years down the line. Lisi Guy, on this Thursday, a really great game in San Marcos. It's Arizona State and Texas State. 2 teams off to a perfect 2-0 start, where the Bobcats in year number 2 under G.J. Kinney are booked as a 1.5-point home favorite. But earlier today, it was an even pick 'em on the money line, -110 on both sides. Sun Devils and Bobcats now slightly skewed to the home team in San Marcos, Texas State. But it's -111 money line for the Bobcats. It's -108 on the other side for the Fear of the Fort Devils.
Yeah, and, I've been very impressed in regards to Arizona State and Sam Levitt. He only threw for 75 yards last week. But again, the way that defense has been playing, it's been keeping them in matchups. And Kenny Dillingham has done an absolute great job, I believe, in year number 3 in regards to this program. I mean, think about this for a second, Ben. He went through how many quarterbacks? Jaden Rashada. It was like a revolving door. They were like on the Drew Pine was there, and I mean, they had more quarterbacks than you can imagine. And now we finally, settled on Sam Levitt, and that defense is coming around. They can run the football. They can obviously shut down the run, and that's why they're 2-0. They beat up on a very blue-collar team in Will Rogers and Miss State last week. They jumped out to a 30-3 lead. I actually like them. I know people are talking about a trap game. This is a Texas State team that's averaging 40 points per game and very good defensively, holding opposing offenses to 18 points per game. But I think speed kills. I think Arizona State has a speed advantage. Might be close early, but I'm going to take Arizona State. I think they win this matchup as a dog.
Next week is Arizona State's Big 12 opener on the road in Lubbock. They will have an extended break, and I'll tell you this, I'll take the Sun Devils in that game against the Red Raiders, sham of an organization that Joey McGuire is leading there in Lubbock, Texas. But Lisi, guy, when you talk about ASU this year, perfect 2-0 against the number, one of 9 teams to cover in 2 games this year in college football as a favorite, one of 3 FBS programs to cover as a favorite in both games against 2 FBS foes in each. And I'm sure you saw what Cam Scadaboo did last week for Arizona State in the first ever win for ASU over an SEC school in Mississippi State. 33 carries, 262 yards, was also Sam Levitt's leading receiver with 3 grabs and 35 yards in the passing attack. The guy can do it all. 124 and a hook is his rushing plus receiving yards prop tonight against Texas State. But the Bobcats are a great story, and a team that a lot look to in the group of 5 and in the Sun Belt to maybe contend for one of those automatic bids to the college football playoff. 8-5 last year in year 1 under G.J. Kinney. It was their first time in 11 seasons as a Sun Belt school. They won 7 or more games, and now, Joe, after being tested in week 1 by Lamar, they hammered UTSA last week 49-10.
Yeah, they did, and they're going to need a better defensive effort because I think interior line favors the Sun Devils, but we'll see how it plays out, Ben.
Jordan McLeod, the former JMU quarterback, 309 yards, 2 TDs through the air, and 2 rushing scores last week against the Roadrunners. Now we set the stage for week 2 of the NFL season in Miami. Up next.
There's smart and there's not smart. Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Keep it here and win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
1947, future Hall of Famer Ralph Kiner hits 2 home runs in a Pirates 4-3 win over the Boston Braves at Forbes Field. After his baseball career, Kiner became a lovable broadcaster for the Mets, often fumbling player names like calling Gary Carter Gary Cooper.
Gary Cooper comes up, and Cooper has been, Carter, I say, has been perfect tonight.
For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Purdue University physicists have opened the world's first quantum disco with the world's tiniest disco ball. And by tiny, I mean a disco ball 1/100th the width of a human hair, made of glowing fluorescent nanodiamonds levitating inside a pure vacuum, spinning 1.2 billion times per minute. The point? Not to improve your platform shoe disco finger, but to simulate what happens to qubits inside a quantum computer. Computing power that could be 150 billion times faster than yesterday's supercomputer. And that's a lot cooler than John Travolta doing the funky chicken. Follow me at Chicapalvo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Wherever you go, there you are. Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you. So now you can get the winning edge anywhere. Even while the wife's talking to you. If you got an earbud. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Week 2 of the 2024 NFL season starts tonight on a Thursday in South Florida. The Dolphins play host to divisional mate, the Buffalo Bills. He's Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. Lisi, guy, to start off short week Thursday night football games, the NFL schedule makers know what they are doing. They give you a marquee matchup, a divisional duel. That's what we have here between 2 teams out of the AFC East who enter week 2 as co-favorites to win a divisional crown, each at a plus 180 price. Both teams 10 cents in front of Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets at plus 190. Now let's get to the game tonight. Miami, a 2.5-point home favorite, total at 48.5. Before we dive into the numbers, let's set the scene for tonight. First, injury perspective. Josh Allen injured his non-throwing left hand in the season-opening come-from-behind victory against Arizona. There was some questions, short week. Would he be ready to go? He is fine. He is set to play tonight for Buffalo. On the other side for Miami, some injury concern in the running back room. Raheem Mostert already has been ruled out for this week 2 contest. Devon Achane, the second-year pro, is going to test out his injured ankle pre-game. Mike McDaniel saying yesterday, quote, "We'll see." Lisa Guy, what do you make of the rosters entering tonight?
I still think that Buffalo is the healthier side. And again, Miami's going to need to run the football and shut down the run. This could be a carbon copy of what we saw in terms of week 17, where they couldn't stop Josh Allen and they couldn't stop the physicality of the rushing attack. Now, Josh Allen had a breakout performance last year, 300-yard plus, 2 touchdowns. But I think tonight, Ben, it's going to come down to James Cook. I've been all over James Cook in week 1, had 70-plus yards, no touchdowns. He's plus 180 tonight to hit pay dirt. I think they can run the football on Miami, and that is the weakness, in my opinion, of the Dolphins' big picture. They're not going anywhere for a playoff run until that defensive front gets better. Would they give up a $144 against Bigsby and Travis Etienne last week? 4 yards per rush, 4.4 yards per carry. Is it going to stop tonight? Absolutely not. I just don't see it. I think Buffalo, to me, is the best team in the division. I still believe that. I believe in Buffalo big picture, plus 950 as a dark horse for the AFC. And again, I think until you shut down Allen, you're not going to win anything. You're just not. And they don't have the defense, in my opinion, to do it.
So it is very interesting, Lisa Guy. Of course, divisional foes, they ended out week 18 against one another last season. Buffalo, who had won 5 straight to end out the regular season after starting 6-6, came all the way back to win the AFC East divisional crown for a 4th consecutive year. The Dolphins dropped 3 of their final 5 games, including their final 2, to cough up a substantial divisional advantage when Buffalo was struggling. So that's the component of these two teams. The Bills winning both of the games last year. Did Miami beat them early on? Regardless, that is where the stake is tonight. Now, from a weather perspective, Joe, we've got boots on the ground in Miami. Joe Ranieri and Craig Mish both joining us on the early line throughout this week, saying the weather is supposed to be gnarly all week long into the weekend in South Florida. Through the afternoon today, there's supposed to be some pretty significant storms, but by the time we get to 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight, near kick inside Hard Rock Stadium, the weather's supposed to dissipate a little bit. The winds calm down, not nearly as much of a percentage chance of rain. I bring that up because the total earlier this week was 50.5, north of 50. It's dropped by 2 full points to 48 in a hook. What's the reason, Lisa Guy? Weather? Or is it, hey, just the first short week Thursday night football game of the season?
Well, I think you look at not just that, it's how Miami played last week. They came out lethargic against Jacksonville. Offense was not hitting on all cylinders, wasn't really till the second half. And again, the transition that Buffalo made in the second half from a defensive perspective to shut down Kyler Murray in the second half was a pretty good effort, considering they fell behind 17-3. So I think that's what you see in regards to this game playing out, coupled with the fact maybe of weather or wind. But again, even if there is bad elements, I'll give you this. If it is windy or if it is a wet track, who do you think it favors? To me, it favors Buffalo even that much more because of the physicality of the rushing attack. You have a quarterback that can run it, and you have a physical running back in James Cook and my guy, sweet baby Ray Davis, right? So, I mean, that's it. I don't see how Miami, better hope that the track is fast so that they potentially can get into a shootout with Josh Allen.
Still 48.5 for that total. We'll see how the game is expected to go. Dive into the numbers and the players that will impact the outcome for the start of week number 2. Tonight in Miami, it's the Dolphins and the Bills. Again, Miami, 2.5-point home favorite. Is the line correct? We break it down up next here on Football Full Circle.
The Winning Edge.
You've got it.
But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us.
But we're working on that.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. College football tonight, 2-0 Arizona State on the road visiting 2-0 Texas State. Is the first road game of the season for the Sun Devils and is the first time the teams have ever battled. Arizona State's roster has 60 total newcomers this season. Texas State coming off an impressive season that included their first ever bowl win. A pair of 0-2 teams square off as South Alabama plays host to Northwestern State. Tomorrow night, 2-0 UNLV visits 1-1 Kansas. And a top 20 battle on tap with number 14 Kansas State at home against number 20 Arizona. 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey said it was a group decision made with the coaches and trainers to sit out Monday night's game against the Jets. He told reporters a few days before that he was certain he'd play Monday, but ultimately missed the game because of lingering calf and Achilles injuries. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Progressive presents Renters MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Emily Neal's 70-inch TV. Because after watching her second-grade students yell at each other for hours, there's nothing Emily enjoys more than watching super-rich housewives also yell at each other. Why? Because those women are not her responsibility. And that's why her TV is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
You might wonder, John Legend, how do you keep your voice sounding so legendary? Honey. And how do I keep my protection against COVID-19 up to date? With a COVID shot this season, designed for recent variants.
You can get your COVID-19 shot when getting your flu shot if you're due for both, as recommended by the CDC.
The fresher, the better.
Ask your healthcare provider about getting this season's COVID-19 shot when getting your flu shot.
Sponsored by Pfizer.
Days are getting cooler.
The shadows are getting longer.
You know what that means? It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Week 2 of the 2024 NFL season kicks off tonight in Miami. The Dolphins a 2.5-point home favorite against the Buffalo Bills. Total stands at 48.5. Lisi guy, under Mike McDaniel, who took over the reins in Miami to start 2022, the Dolphins have been great when they have been expected to beat a team from the odds makers' perspective. They're 18-4, including an outright victory over Jacksonville to open up this season as the favored side, 18-4 straight up since Mike McDaniel took over. They're 9-3 against the spread as the favored side in the last 2 years, starting in 2023. They did not cover against Jacksonville on Sunday. Buffalo has won 4 consecutive AFC East divisional championships. So in that 4-year span from 2020 through this week, they've only been booked as an underdog 13 total times. This will be the 14th game as a dog with Josh Allen and Buffalo since 2020. That's it. They're 7-6 against the number. They're 6-7 straight up. But as we look at a spread that is less than a field goal, and I do not expect it to get to that flat number of 3, how do you approach which side wins and if the spread's even going to come to factor?
Yeah, and with the spread factor, I throw it out the window, honestly, and I look at where both teams are after week 1, and in order for Miami to win, what do they have to do, and what does Buffalo have to do on the road? In any tough road game, Ben, you need to run the football consistently and win the turnover battle, and I really think that favors Buffalo and Josh Allen, plus coupled with the fact that Josh Allen has basically owned the Miami Dolphins. Right now, granted, each team is different, and Buffalo did not lose to them a couple of years ago on a Sunday. That was the game where the punter botched that kick, right? Miami got it in regards to that matchup. But it still comes down to the defense for Miami. You know, Miami is the Ferrari. Can they outscore anybody? Sure, they can on any given day. But they can't stop top offenses. They just can't. And again, offenses that punch them in the mouth and are going to run right down their throat. Teams like Baltimore, teams like Kansas City, teams like Buffalo that run last year during the playoffs, right? They got kicked in the chops. And again, it started week 1 with a physical offensive line in Jacksonville. So again, until I see that defense step up, forget the offense right now. To me, it's the same old Dolphins. And that's why I don't care if they're favored. We keep talking about why are they favored? Why do the books establish lines to make bettors and especially sharps think, right? Why is a certain team favored? Am I missing something? They just don't do it for 50-50 action. They do it to take our money, and I'm not buying it. I'm taking the better team with the better quarterback, and that's Buffalo.
Lisa, you mentioned the Bills' dominance in the AFC East and, of course, over a divisional foe in Miami. They won both games last year by a touchdown in each, 48-20 early in the year in Western New York. And the Bills were booked as a favorite of at least 2.5 points in each of those two games. Why do I bring that up? Because how good Miami is when expected to win, and they're still the home favorites tonight at 18-4 straight up. They're only 3-12 outright as an underdog under Mike McDaniel, not beating the teams they are expected to maybe keep games close against or even slightly edge out as an underdog. So when we look at this game tonight, you mentioned Miami on the ground. Last week through the air, both of these secondaries only allowed either quarterback they saw. It was Arizona's Kyler Murray, 162 yards. It was Jacksonville's Trevor Lawrence, just $162 against the Finns as well. And both of these two teams, Lisi, had to fight back in their home and season debuts. Both down by at least 2 touchdowns at some point in the opening half. Arizona led Buffalo 17-3. Jacksonville 14-zip early on against Miami. Both came all the way back to win at home, but missed out on a cover by the hook. However, when we talk about Miami's offense, it's not even so much the running back issues that we might see. And Jeff Wilson was the Finns' leading rusher last week, 5 carries for 26 yards. It's the passing attack. Part of it was game script, right? Miami playing from behind, down by as many as 10 at the halftime break. They had to air it out. And that's what Tua Tagovailoa did. 338 yards in the opener against the Jags. 80 of those, or 130 in total, but the touchdown was an 80-yard strike to Tyreek Hill, who had 7 grabs for $130. Joe, when you start Miami's conversation, it's on the offense, it's through the air.
It is. And both wide receivers, obviously, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, need to get their totals. I believe, and I think Tua needs to be in the area of about 275 yards and limit turnovers. Maybe 1 interception you'll give him. He cannot have 2 like he did in regards to that game last year, right? Especially with the season on the line. So it's going to come down to the turnover battle. I believe the player from Miami that's most important, believe it or not, is Waddle. I think he'll step up tonight. Again, he's got a 63.5 total. I do like him in the area of 80 or 90 tonight. He needs to get around that number to take the pressure off of Tyreek Hill and to force coverage off, right? They're going to roll coverage from Tyreek Hill to Jalen Waddle. If Waddle's eaten over the middle, he's the guy that does the dirty work. So can Tua distribute the football? Yeah. And if it's not there, he's got to check down. You got to hit the backs coming out of the backfield. Forget forcing throws into coverage. That's the one thing in big games that Tua seems to do. Stares down receivers, and that leads to interceptions. Cannot do that tonight in a primetime game.
Buffalo was one of 7 teams last year to allow less than 200 yards through the air. Miami top half in the National Football League in terms of defending the pass as well. Tua Tagovailoa has a higher passing yards prop by more than 25 yards in front of Josh Allen. 268.5 for Tua, 242.5 for Josh. 4 of the first 5 games for Miami a season ago, including both of their first 2 home games. This is their second home game already in 2024. Tua Tagovailoa went over this number of 268.5 and pretty substantially so. And when you look at the wide receiver numbers, Lisa, we're already paying the Tyreek Hill tax. 93.5 his receiving yards prop. In the mid-60s for Jalen Waddle, who also broke through the century mark last week, 5 grabs for 109 yards. I would never advise taking the under on Tyreek Hill, given all that he can do on a football field, but I do like the second option of Waddle contributing. When he was fully healthy in the first 2 weeks last year for Miami, over this number with at least 78 receiving yards. I like the secondary option of Waddle more than I like that steep price, 93.5 on Tyreek.
Yeah, it's a good look, and that's the way I think Miami has to attack it, right? I'm actually looking at secondary options for the Bills. You're going to laugh, but I like Dawson Knox. You know, he got over this number, the exact same number, Ben. This is the exact same number that they tacked on him last year in Week 17. Everybody looking Kincaid. Dawson Knox with a cheap number, 12.5. I think he can get up to 20-25. Don't be shocked either if Dawson Knox scores an anytime touchdown. Again, in red zone opportunities, Dawson Knox seems to appear with Josh Allen. And James Cook as well, 19.5 in regards to the screen game. You talk about Miami's running backs coming out. You have to get the football in your playmakers' hands. This guy's electric. He could get 100+ in regards to rushing and receiving every single weekend. Why not get him one-on-one opportunities out in space? Especially with limited wide receivers. I just don't understand sometimes the offensive philosophy. I would expect James Cook tonight, 20 to 25 touches, and that's rushing and receiving.
19.5, that receiving yards prop. 83.5 is the combo prop, a number he was over last week. Hard sledding against Arizona, 18 carries for 71 yards. Did have a pop of 15, so really 17 carries for mid-50s. It wasn't easy for James Cook, but 3 grabs, 32 yards last week, Lisi Guy. In 17 regular season games, James Cook had at least 20 receiving yards in 9 of 17. It's a new cast and crew in terms of the receivers for Josh Allen. Some familiarity is James Cook and Khalil Shakir, who had 42 yards last week. The rookie, Keon Coleman, leading wide receiver for Buffalo, 4 grabs on 5 targets for 51 yards. His prop tonight, 42.5. The highest, though, is that second-year tight end in Dalton Kincaid at 44.5. He had only 1 grab for 11 yards a week ago. Much more from Thursday Night Football next.
Yeah, it's getting cooler.
Football weather is here.
Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
A recall on apple juice due to potentially harmful levels of arsenic has expanded to include products at several retailers nationwide. This update brought to you by Prevnar 20. On Monday, Refresco Beverages Incorporated issued a voluntary recall of 133,500 cases of apple juice after the products were found to contain inorganic arsenic slightly above FDA recommended levels. The expanded recall came just weeks after Walmart pulled more than 9,500 cases of apple juice from its shelves after it tested positive for elevated arsenic levels. A sequel to the classic adventure film The Goonies is reportedly in the works, with the original cast set to return. The film, released in 1985, follows a group of kids from Goondocks in Astoria, Oregon, who follow a treasure map to try and save their homes from foreclosure. The news was originally reported by The Sun, which reports the film could start production next summer, with it premiering in theaters by 2026 or 2027. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
Life insurance. Why are you putting it off? Can't afford it? Too much hassle? Think you don't need it? There's lots of excuses for putting off life insurance. But if you weren't there, who would pay the mortgage and other bills? With Ethos, you could be covered in 10 minutes and boom, family protected. Ethos, fast and easy online term life insurance. Up to $2 million in coverage with no medical exam. Some policies as low as $1 a day. Answer a few health questions and get your free quote at getethos.com. That's getethos.com.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Plenty more around the National Football League in week number 2, starting tonight in South Florida. At least you got a couple of the props that I find fascinating. Dalton Kincaid, the second-year tight end out of Utah, has the highest receiving yards number for Buffalo. He only had 1 catch on 2 targets for just 11 yards a week ago in the season opener in Western New York. But there's a lot of optimism for this tight end to be a huge factor of this Buffalo offense this year. But 44.5 seems a little bit steep for a guy that wasn't really out there all last week. It could be that buyback spot, though, and it might be an area to look. I know you're going Dawson Knox, who's the reliable veteran at the tight end spot, who actually did go over his prop of 12.5 last week in the game against Arizona, as I find the overall statistical numbers for Knox quickly. 1 grab only on 2 targets as well, but at least 23 yards.
Yeah, I think both tight ends are going to have an opportunity to get through their total. And the reason why I say that is, if you're McDermott coming on a short week, right, you saw the success that Jacksonville had, I would use 2 tight ends, right? Both of those guys are great blockers as well, coming from run-heavy offenses in regards to college. They can run routes over the middle, short to intermediate routes, especially if the weather is windy and everything that you say. It's going to be tight. It's going to be heavy formations for Buffalo, which would lead to obviously both of those guys going through their total. So again, you know, pre-snap or pre-kick, I would be on both of those players. I just think that when you get a number for Knox so low, 12.5, you're talking about 1 reception, right? And then so that is the only reason why it's appealing to me, 12.5. And it's a look that Josh Allen has certain guys that he goes to, and Dawson Knox against the Dolphins and Patriots always seems to eat.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Lacey guy, I laugh and I chuckle when you say somebody that's at the bottom of the barrel that maybe not a lot of people are paying attention to, like you did on Monday when we were here on Football Full Circle, and you go, you're going to laugh, but I'm giving you my guy from the Super Bowl in Jawan Jennings, who just turned out to be San Francisco's leading receiver in a Monday night blowout of the New York Jets. So, Lisa guy, if we had to give a couple of best bets, our favorite 1, 2, 3 bets for Thursday Night Football, before we talk overall season outlook for these 2 clubs, where are you looking tonight?
Well, prop bets, I said James Cook now at plus 180, anytime touchdown. Dawson Knox over the 12.5, Waddle over the 63.5, and I really like the Bills. I mean, I don't even want the 2.5. Give me the money line. I think they win the ball game outright.
I'm a little bit scared to share what my betting card looks like for this Thursday. Take a guess. Take a guess. What do you think I have? What do you think I like tonight?
You're on the Dolphins, Waddle, and Cook? Bills? What do you? All right. Okay.
Bills.
Right.
So here are the 3 bets that I have placed. Well, technically, 3 bets. Bills money line with a little profit boost on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Because the algo's updating as we speak. Right. James Cook over 19.5 receiving yards. And then James Cook in a same-game parlay, 20+, 40+ for Khalil Shakir. That's all receiving yards. And Jalen Waddle, 60+ receiving yards as well. So
I don't mind that.
We're seeing things.
Yeah, we're seeing things clearly. I actually like Cook on the ground as well. I think Cook could potentially be in the area of 80 or 90 on the ground. I mean, I watched that performance. I know he didn't break out, but again, you saw Bigsby, you saw ETN. I just think it's going to be a heavy dose of the running backs tonight.
Which is not a bad idea there, Lisi, either, because they did put up a $128, led by Tank Bigsby, and it was a disappointing Travis Etienne fumble early in that third quarter that kind of stifled Jacksonville offensively as they were driving, and the Jags were blanked in the second half by Miami. Buffalo was much better defensively in the second half as well. Scoreless is what they held Arizona to in the third, gave up 11 points in the fourth quarter, but did come all the way back to win 34-28 over Arizona. Now, Lisa, guys, season outlook for these 2 teams. Co-favorites, again, in the AFC East, entering tonight, both at plus 180. The Jets, the only team in this division, and that includes the Patriots at the moment, to be winless through week 1, but New York still the second or third best price now, just 10 cents back of both Buffalo and Miami at plus 190. Who are you more optimistic about making the run to a divisional crown this year and an overall more optimistic season outlook?
I think it's Buffalo. And the reason why I say that is last year they had to sort of find their identity with Stephon Diggs out of that, not consistent in regards to not scoring a touchdown for the last 7 weeks of the regular season. They grounded it out. They had an whole off season to know about the type of personnel that they had. They add Keon Coleman. I like that, right? They're not figuring it out. Sean McDermott and I think Brady know their identity. Now you have the pieces supposedly in place. Now you got to run with it. And again, I said this to everybody this week. They have the best quarterback in that division. As good as you want to believe Aaron Rodgers and Tua are, Josh Allen, hands down, is the best guy, dual threat, and is durable. Give me the Bills. I like the Bills. I think it's great value at plus 180.
Yeah, I think it will be really interesting to see how this divisional race plays out, because I think those three teams at the top, no disrespect to New England, I do not expect them to have the best record in this division. In fact, I think they will be at the bottom by a considerable amount. So maybe no disrespect was not really as nice as I intended it to be, but I do really think it's a three-way race where all three of these teams, Buffalo, New York, Miami, capable of being a 10-win team. And frankly, if you're going to make the postseason in the AFC, either via a divisional crown or a playoff wildcard berth, you're going to need to be at least 10-7, if not a little bit more than that. I think all three teams can get there. I don't think the New York Jets are going to fade as some might after week number 1. And let's not forget the Jets entered this season with some betting love in the marketplace as the AFC East favorites. But let's also remember who has won this division 4 consecutive years. Josh Allen in Buffalo. Yes, it looks different on both sides of the football in Western New York, but one constant remains. And like Joe, I would agree, the best quarterback in this division. That's Josh Allen. 4 total touchdowns, 18 of 23 for 232 through the air against Arizona. If he cleans up the turnovers, which is always the bugaboo for Buffalo and Allen, this is as dangerous as you will find around the NFL. Some news and notes around the National Football League elsewhere in the Week 2 slate comes your way next.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall.
The World Series is on its way.
And SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
The second week of the regular season starts tonight on a Thursday. It's our first short week Thursday night football game of the regular season. It will continue that way all the way up until week 16 or 17. Joe, some other news and notes around the National Football League to get us set for this week. When you look at some of the spreads, the largest one this weekend in the Charm City, Baltimore trying to bounce back from the season opening loss in Kansas City. Lamar Jackson, not at practice earlier in the week, was back out on the practice field yesterday and officially taken off the injury report. He didn't suffer an injury necessarily against Kansas City, but took a lot of shots as the offense was virtually all Lamar. 8.5-point spread in favor of the Flock, total 41.5 as they host the Las Vegas Raiders. Any concern about Lamar Jackson's wherewithal and ability to withstand the beating throughout this season?
Absolutely. Ben, how many times did he run it? 14? I mean, he over 100 yards. Again, yes, he was so effective in that game, but they're not going to win an AFC championship with Lamar running that way throughout the regular season and playoffs. Just not going to happen. They need a hint of a passing attack. And I know we threw for 200 plus, but you could have 100 going to Likely, but you better have 200 going to your wideouts and your star wide receivers. You can't have Zay Flowers under 73 yards and Likely being the main target. You can't have that. So again, I'm concerned. I like the Raiders plus the 8.5. You want to give me 8.5? I'll take it. Again, I know the Raiders laid an egg on the road, but I'll take that because I think they want to establish a run with Zamir White and those running backs. I'll take the Raiders with the points.
Listen, it's a big number, right? They lost by 12. They did not cover as a 3.5-point underdog in L.A. against the Chargers. But in the first 9 games that Antonio Pierce was the interim head coach in the desert, 7-1-1 against the spread. One of the best cover teams down that stretch of 9 games, in which they won 5 of them. So keep an eye on Las Vegas. Still think Baltimore gets its first win of the year and wins outright, but to keep it under 8.5 points would not surprise me. Joe, elsewhere, we know Malik Willis is getting the start in Lambeau for the Packers' home opener against the Colts. We've seen some movement on this number. Still a field goal in favor of Indy on the road, but if you want that flat number of 3 with the Packers to take the points, minus 120 in the juice. How are you approaching Malik Willis and Green Bay in this game against the Colts?
I look to Josh Jacobs in that rushing attack, right? That is the one constant. Josh Jacobs had a very good game against the Eagles. We know about AR. We know about Jonathan Taylor. If I'm LaFleur, I keep the ball on the ground, and I look to grind out a 17-13 win over the Colts. That's the way I would approach it. I like Green Bay. Don't love them, but I would still take the under, Ben. I have no confidence in Malik Willis, unfortunately. Again, you want to talk about overrated? I mean, this guy was supposed to be potentially the best draft pick or quarterback 4 years ago coming out of Liberty. Amazing in terms of the reassessment.
12 career games, including stepping in for a throw in Sao Paulo when Jordan Love got injured late in that game. He was drafted in the 3rd round of the 2022 NFL Draft by Tennessee. There was a time in that draft cycle, Lisi Guy, when you and I were here on this very radio show talking about the odds that Malik Willis could go first overall, or was the odds-on favorite in front of Kenny Pickett to be the first quarterback off the board. It was Pickett. He was the only QB in the opening round. He's now the backup in Philadelphia. Speaks to the lack of strength, the weakness, if you will, in that quarterback draft class. But Willis did make 3 starts during his rookie year in Nashville back in 2022. He has not thrown a touchdown pass in his career, and he's got 3 interceptions. It's interesting to see where this line could end up by Sunday. Joe, I'm not sure if you saw the video around Joe Burrow. He says he has not. That was circulating around social media. Him picking up a water bottle on the sideline. Looked like he fumbled it, had to use his other hand to maybe pick it up. Him moving his wrist around after the wrist surgery that sidelined his season after only 10 games a year ago. Joey B was asked about this yesterday. Said he hadn't seen it. He did what? He just remembers drinking some water. Are you concerned at all about the Bengals outside of the fact they lost as a 7.5-point favorite outright to New England?
Obviously, they have no wide receiver depth outside of maybe Jermaine Burton in regards to the backup role. Joe Burrow appeared to be hurt in that video. Was it only one drive? Only time will tell. I will say great numbers against the Chiefs. 70% completion percentage and 313 passing yards per game. 3-1 overall as well.
5.5-point spread in favor of KC in Arrowhead. It's the marquee matchup of the afternoon window on Sunday. He's Joe Lisi. Catch him tonight on NFL Football In-Game Live Game Day during Thursday Night Football. I'm Ben Stevens. We'll see you here tomorrow on FFC starting at noon Eastern.
Now you've done it. You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.